Hello, and welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Andy Rogo, and I will be your host today. Let me introduce our panel. First, we have Bill Hirschman, who is an arts journalist and founder of FloridaTheaterOnStage.com. Michelle Solomon is also an arts journalist and editor of MiamiArtScene.com. And Carol Cassie, owner and operator of Carol Cassie Theatrical Marketing and Public Relations. Joining us today, we have two guests, Genie Croft and Keith Garsson. They are otherwise known as the brains behind Primal Forces, a theater company now in their second season at the Soul Theater in Boca Raton. Thanks for joining us, Genie and Keith. Before we get into questions, we have a clip we want to show, so let's take a look at that first.
My life story unfolds before you.
I know Sever being held at Gross Hamburgerstrasse waiting for deportation.
Am I a victim?
I walk through the incinerated streets of Berlin like a homing pigeon.
Or am I a villain?
Friends, and I knew who would go to whose birthdays. I knew who was married to an alien, and who died, and who went to whose funerals.
You can decide.
So, Genie and Keith, tell us a little about what we just saw.
A comedy, right?
Yeah,
It's a light comedy. No, that was called Blonde Poison. It was our third show of the season, and we picked it because there are so many Holocaust dramas, and I stayed away from those until I could find one that really was different, had a new spin on the topic. So that play never went in a concentration camp. It never had the traditional elements of a Holocaust play. And we were lucky to land one of the best actresses in South Florida. So it all came together and it was perfect timing.
How did you find that play originally?
I was looking for Holocaust plays. I've been looking for them for years, but they were all the same thing. This one finally was something different and a new topic.
Primal Forces has a certain mission. Like, I want you to tell our audiences about the mission because it's a bit different. The plays that you pick and where you're kind of moving local theater along with Primal Forces.
Well, first of all, we do plays that have been produced before, but haven't been done down here. So we're kind of a hybrid in terms of original productions and established works. But we try to find topics and plots that throw the audience off a little bit and do a different spin on it. For example, there's a lot of plays about aging and dementia and Alzheimer's, so we found one that covered that topic, but from a different angle. Instead of this woman dying and trying to pass on, wisdom to the next generation, this was a hardcore woman who really was not pleasant. And so we try to go over an aisle away from the normal plays.
That was Breadcrumbs?
That was Breadcrumbs.
Do you both search for plays? Keith, are you and where do you look?
Well, I have a lot of friends who travel all over the country, sometimes the world, and they'll email me, oh, you should see this play, or you should see that play, or we just saw this one show, and sometimes that play is not appropriate, but other things that theater has done is appropriate for us.
Or that playwright.
Or that playwright is appropriate.
Do people send you scripts or
Yes,
somebody?
still. Constantly. That's
Lots of scripts.
Lots of scripts.
Yes, I mean, I can be somewhere and somebody will stop me because they'll recognize me from, past theaters I've worked in, and, oh, you're still doing shows. Can I send you? Okay, just send it. That's it.
Yeah. How long have you been working together, the two of you?
I would say, you mean doing Primal Forces or
no,
just work?
from the get-go.
I met Keith actually because I cast him in a show, which is how I've met most of the people that I worked with in my life because they auditioned for something I cast them in. And believe it or not, it was Isn't It Romantic by Wendy Wasserstein.
Oh.
We rehearsed it through 9/11.
Yeah, it was scary times.
First show at the JCC, they were getting bomb threats, and
Yeah, it was
while we were rehearsing. Yeah.
an exciting show.
First
but-
producer was Myrna Lohman.
Yeah, then, right.
You've been I'm going to mispronounce this, but a peripatetic operation. Talk a little bit about how you've moved around and also how that has affected your ability to find and keep audiences.
Well, we keep getting kicked out of
Yes.
every.
You do good work and then you get kicked out.
That's what happens. Well, it's affected it, but we've remained relatively consistent in terms of the scale and the size of the productions. I don't think, if somebody offered me 300 seats, I don't know if I would really take to that, because that would change the mission and change the kind of work we do.
We've really tried to stay focused on our mission statement and not grabbing too much too soon and expanding quickly with bigger pieces, because we actually do the type of theater that's a little bit more introspective. And actually doing Gingerbread Lady was, we said, like doing a musical. We had 6 people on the stage. That was a big cast for us in an intimate space.
You know, it seems like most of the work you've been doing recently focus on female protagonists. Is that by choice? Because you have your history with the Women's Theater Project, are you choosing to do plays that focus on female characters, or is it just kind of worked out that way?
It's really worked out that way because we're picking new stuff, modern plays, and fortunately, female playwrights are getting more of a voice, so more of the interesting stuff to us happens to focus on female characters.
And I might push it a little.
Yeah.
How do you decide who directs what?
Anything that could potentially sell, Genie directs. Anything that's going to close on page 4, I direct.
That's why we work so well together.
When we have the 4 shows, it's pretty obvious who should direct what.
And we read back and forth and discuss a lot of there's a lot of reading material going on, and we really have a lot of very, what you would call, healthy, honest discussions about the type of pieces we really want to go forward to do.
Do you have any shows or plays, different things you'd like to revisit that maybe you've each done in your past or you've done together?
I'm going to go by recently, since we did move over to the Soul Theater in Boca, the amount of people that have come to me and asked for 3 specific shows over and over again. I was thinking about this. One was called Speaking Elephant, which was written by a local playwright, actually, and had an amazing run. The other was Bridge and Tunnel, which I did with Karen a few times. Actually, Keith moved that when he was doing things to the Willow after I did it Women's Theater Project. And the other one I just recently did called The Pink Unicorn. And people are asking for, and they're so different. And yet people keep asking me, when are you going to bring that back? When are you going to bring that back? And we keep talking about, we really have to introduce new pieces that haven't been done and not revisit some of the old, but in another capacity.
We should point out, Speaking Elephant was primarily was 2 actresses actually being anthropomorphic elephants and talking to each other. And Bridge and Tunnel is a one-woman show that Karen Stevens has done a few times, in which she plays 14,
Multiple.
15, however many characters. But just so people know what we're talking about.
Right. The Speaking Elephant, too, was an amazing piece because it touched so many people, and it was a true story about these 2 elephants named Wanda and Winky, and what their life story was like. And it was symbolic of what happens to people as they age and have to be moved. But it was set in a zoo.
And they were done through the Women's Theater Project, which you ran for many years.
Yes, yes. I was artistic director and one of the founders. So, yes, and Keith saw all our work. He would and actually that was one of the things that would happen. He would say, "I think you should bring that somewhere else." When we did the Year of Magical Thinking, that was another one that we brought over
Because we could afford it.
Yes.
It should be pointed. People probably don't realize like you said, when you did Gingerbread Lady with 6 people, that was like twice the cast size you normally have.
Right.
You've done one-person shows. You've done particularly, but that fascinates me in the focus that puts on relationships, and that in these small venues. Can you talk a little bit about your fascination with that? I mean, it can't be an accident.
Well, if you go with, I forgot what the original, Aristotle said the 3 unities. So you have plot, time, and space. So it's like a lot of plays, I feel they get sidetracked with subplots and other themes, I like to focus on one conflict between 2 or 3 people and stick to that. And if it's an hour and 10 minutes and 1 act long, well, that's fine. If it's well written, it's going to be a great evening. For example, An Accident, which just, I think I even mentioned in the program notes that all these plays where people recover, it's always in the physical recovery. You will walk again. But it occurred to me, what about the mental side?
Right.
You know, what happens to it? Do we come out? Are we the same? Are we forever changed? And that's something I wanted to explore.
So I think this is a good place to stop and look at another clip that we have of a play that does exactly what you were just talking about.
People learn from day one not to mess with me.
Oh, well, Papa always said you get more flies with molasses than vinegar.
Well, that's easy for you to swallow. You are the molasses without even trying. Even as a young child, I wasn't afraid of anything. I would meet the devil before day and look him in the eye no matter what the price. If Sadie is molasses, then I am the vinegar. Sadie is sugar, I am the spice.
Well, it's a wonder she wasn't lynched.
Oh, boy.
So that was from Having Our Say. Tell us a little about that production.
Okay, well, this was a show that was on my bucket list for many years. And actually, I know Bill and I talked about it at one time because I was going to do it as a reading first to test the waters because it hadn't been done. And after I worked with Karen a number of times, and then I worked with Avery and the Devil's Music, and I just thought, okay, now I have the glue.
Karen Stevens and Avery Summers.
Correct.
Right.
And I thought, I've got to do that show. It's one of those things that kept haunting me. I'd read the book, and of course, I'm always drawn to pieces about strong women. And given the current political climate of voices that have been ignored, these are American heroes. And so it became a driving passion. I have to do this show. Luckily, working with somebody who says, oh, I think that's a good idea. You want to do it? It's on your bucket list? We'll find the time when it's going to fit into our season. And it did. And
Can I just say, in all fairness, though, sold a lot of tickets.
that is correct. And I have to say, not only did it sell a lot of tickets, and I know many of you saw this production, I have never seen a reaction from an audience like I did with this one. First of all, they were real people. So people had read the book, they knew who these women were, and they played 101 and 103. During the intermission, people were coming up and taking photos of their history that was on the wall, the pictures of their family. So we had to tell the audience, can you just wait? I mean, at the end of the show, as the ladies would go into curtain call, the audience was on the stage with them. It was a flood of love and telling them how important the play was. And it was one of the most gratifying things I've ever done because I've just never seen such a reaction like that. And I thought, I'm so happy we could do this.
And that's why it's important that we do it in a theater with the size of the Soul.
I wanted you to talk about that for people that haven't gone to Soul and to see your, I enjoy going there. It's this intimate place where you feel like you're seeing something in a way that you're part of, and I think that's what you were talking of. So for people that haven't been to the theater, talk a little bit about your new home. How long have you been there, actually?
We've just finished the first season.
And it's in Boca.
It's in Boca. It's on Federal Highway, so the city can't block it for National Garlic Day or something.
We've lived through in other places.
And we have a wonderful landlord, and normally our neighbors are very loud, but this is a shiatsu massage place.
Yeah.
So it's all good. But it's 70 seats, and the front row is pretty much on stage.
Yeah.
And I remember during the talk back for Having Our Say, people were like, I'm in the living room with them.
They love that part of it.
It's very, I hate to use the word immersive because that has a specific meaning now, but it's as close as you're going to get without.
Given the number of spaces you've been in and the eclectic work you do, what do you do specifically to keep your audience coming with you? Or do you have to build every time you've moved?
We have to build every time we move. Boca has been more receptive. Andrew's Living Arts, I mean, they had no audience.
That's in Fort Lauderdale.
Zero. They're closed now. We moved to Empire, which had a cult following, but that was very specific. You yourself, Andy, have directed there. It's a very specific audience. So while they were appreciative, it wasn't gangbusters like when we moved to Boca and we picked up.
Well, I think also Evening Star had been there before you, and Evening Star had developed an audience. They too were, especially at the end, were doing quality work. So you just continued to raise that bar, and they kept coming back.
Right.
I'm curious, though, from a technical standpoint, directing and staging shows in a space like that, which is the size of a couple of people's living rooms, and particularly Empire Stage, the same thing. As a director, how do you two manage that? There's something different in directing actors and staging work when you are in, again, a space the size of some people's living room.
I'll answer and then you can. I've told this to the actors so many times, and I had a space like that for Women's Theatre Project as well. But I have to say this, the people that were at Women's Theatre Project have followed me to all my different homes as well, and it's so gratifying that they have continued. I used to say to everybody, when you work in a space like this, you remember why you became an actor in the first place.
In what sense?
Because you have to be so honest and so truthful and so in the moment. You have no way of escaping somewhere else because the space is so intimate and the audience is right there. And you can feel them breathing on you. So you have to be that real and that committed and so truthful. And afterwards, people will say to me, and the actors will say, yes, you're absolutely right. It recalls all those things that sometimes they put back to sleep because they're in a bigger space where they have to project and put out a different image.
Also, they can't vamp.
But they can't hide.
They can't hide. They can't relax. I mean, in watching Lurleen in the show that we show, the sculpture, and Angie Radosh in
Tightrope.
And Tightrope, but also in
Breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs. They could never relax. They had to be in the moment all the time. You know, when you're on a big show and a big musical, you can actually sort of hide a little bit, and you can sort of coast a little bit every once in a while, but you can't in these shows.
The actors are front and center. It's all about them. And the thing is, in terms of prepping for it, it's months of leave time for each show. We have to strategize sets, lights. I mean, the lights have to be purchased early. We have to know exactly what kind of special effects we want. That all has to be a lot of time. And the blocking becomes especially critical because there's only so many places you can go and you can move.
Yeah.
And we have no levels. Again, we're a flat space.
I want to ask one more question along the same lines. I'm sorry, but in those kind of spaces, and Gable Stage has that in a larger sense, you've got a relatively wide set and a very relatively narrow number of seats. Does that change anything? How do you deal with that? How do you make people on one side of the theater not feel like they're not seeing everything?
Well, again, it comes down to pre-planning and blocking. I mean,
careful.
We would never have people on opposite ends talking to each other. So the stage, instead of it becoming one big set, it becomes subsets, areas. So, for example, in Blonde Poison, one area represented the train station. One area it was still her living room, but with lighting and blocking, you try to make it consistent without making it obvious.
And really hitting on those areas, which also I think gives the performers a chance to really focus on, this is what I'm doing now, and then I'm crossing over here. And it does become another playing area for them if they're rooted, and they have to be in those moments.
I don't know if you encounter this though with your actors, because I work in these small spaces too. But I constantly have to remind them though to project, even though they're in a small space, because these spaces aren't built acoustically. So, if they're on one side and the audience is on the other side, sometimes they can't hear.
Tell them not to whisper.
Yes, exactly.
Remember,
Gina,
you're
I
still
wanted to
working.
ask you specifically, because you used to do a lot of community theater. In fact, my accountant worked with you so many years ago, I think doing Social Security.
Danny.
Danny,
He's still my accountant.
Yeah. So what's the difference between working with the community theater actor and the professional actor?
Well, the community theater work I did was basically, it started with Stage Door, although that was an equity house. And actually, I joined the union when I was there, so it changed and we had equity actors. The community theater experience is very different to me than the professional experience. I mean, community theater is a different form of using your time element with the actors. You end up doing a lot of training. And I mean, for me, I got to the point where I don't want to do acting 101. I mean, this is not what, I mean, I really want to delve further and further, and I need people that can go there, and I don't have to do it all for them. They have to give it to me. If I'm giving it to them, I'm coaching and teaching, and I don't want more money.
I want to ask you two personally. You're so passionate about theater. You've been in South Florida theater for a long time. What was maybe your, just personally, your first aha moment for theater? Like, when did you just know this is, or when you knew that, maybe you wanted to be directing and not, in front of the stage? Like, just an aha moment, I think, for audiences would like to hear.
As far as moving from acting into directing?
Sure, or just your theater, when your theater spark happened.
My theater spark happened as a child. I was in California. I was born and raised in California. My grandmother was in the arts, and oh my God, she loved it. And so, I mean, I was just emulating her, and she would just melt from it, and I thought, oh, I could do that. That's great. For me personally, when I was in college and you had to take introduction to directing, it opened a whole new, wow, I can do this all. This is really amazing. I don't have to just focus on, what I am and who I am to this. I could do the whole thing and interpret it, and they have to listen.
And Keith, what was your experience? I mean, you had a whole other career.
I still do.
Yeah.
That's how we exist.
No, my aha moment was I was doing, they're playing our song with Oscar and Margot. And they're playing our song is not a true musical, it's more of a play with music. And I realized I was having more fun with the book scenes and less fun arguing with my choreographer and music director, and I'm not arguing, but the musicals, they come with baggage. They're expected to be done a certain way. With a play, I thought, the first play I did really on my own was The Anarchist by David Mamet. Obviously not the greatest play ever written, but it gave me a chance to focus on what I really like doing in the musicals. And that led to branching off from Boca Raton Theater Guild into Primal Forces.
I always, sometimes think civilians or even some actors don't understand what a director actually does besides getting performances out of the performers. The director's job goes much further and is much broader and deeper. Can you tell civilians what the director does?
You are also the co-set designer, you are the co-lighting designer, you are the co-costume. You have an element. You have a say and a design and input into all the technical aspects of the show. The most common phrase we hear from actors is, well, you're going to tell me what you want? And that was the big difference when Genie was talking about community theater. When you get out of community theater into professional theater, the actors, just tell me what you want, I'll do it. But God help you if you don't know what you want, because then they will fill it in, they will take over, and it's no longer your vision. So you have a say in how you want the character to morph, to evolve. You have a say in the look of the show. Do you want it to be dark? Do you want it to be light? Do you want the different time periods to be obvious? Do you want them to not be obvious? How do you want to handle surprises? For example, the gunshot at the end of Blonde Poison. Do you want that to be a bloodbath or should it be symbolic? I mean, these are all directorial decisions.
Do both of you have bucket list shows that you still want to do?
Actually, I think I'll keep that hidden for a while because he's going to turn around and say, all right, we have to start looking for funding if you want to do that. So I have to be careful about some of those things. Well, I don't really right now. looking forward to some other shows that I know are on the horizon, and then I'll look at a bucket list as our finances grow, because that also inhibits some of the things.
What
we
is on
can
the
do.
horizon for Primal Forces?
So next season is 4 new South Florida premieres. Andy and the Orphans, which played at the Roundabout last year. And then the second one, Villainous Company, is an example of a play that I read. I gave it to Genie to read, and then I sort of forgot about it because it wasn't something that immediately hit me as something I'd do. But Genie picked it up, and
I said, oh my God, there is an angle in here I don't think you saw. And I think
Clearly.
it's really, I want to do this show. It's an exciting piece. And so, yes, it's.
the other thing that we did is this past season, we had a lot of dark drama. So we thought, let's balance it out next season and make the dark ones comedies.
So I'm going to interrupt you here, and just so we know where to find you, tell us where to find you online and what your address is.
So we are at www.primalforces.com. And you mean the theater also, where is that? That's at 3333 North Federal Highway in Boca Raton, at
Great.
the Soul Theater.
Great. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
today.
Thank you.
I want to
Thank
thank
you.
our panelists and guests for being with us today.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for watching Spotlight on the Arts. It's a community program, so if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear them. You can email us at spotlightonthearts@browardschools.com. And please check our favorite websites to see what's going on all over South Florida. Those websites are floridatheateronstage.com and miamiartzine.com. Again, thanks for watching, and make sure you tune in next week. And as Iris Acker would always say, go to the theater.